So I hope everyone's got their face masks and their oxygen tanks and all that other good stuff they need to travel beyond our atmosphere. Oh, that works. That counts as a
Yeah,
mask.
yeah.
I
There you
don't
go.
think you can wear that into the grocery store, but you
No,
know,
I
um,
don't think it's.
because we're blasting off into the great unknown with Jason X, aka Jason in Space, from the year it's either 2000, 2001, or 2002 because this thing sat on the shelf for like 2 years. I think it finished in 2000, came out in April of '02, right? But IMDb listed as 2001.
Mhm.
So I don't know what the hell's going on with this thing.
Yeah, it's 2002. Yeah.
Yeah. Now we are joined once again by Lee Shoquist of ChicagoFilm.com and also Peter Bracke, the author of, and I brought the book again,
Oh no.
our Bible for this Friday the 40th series, Crystal Lake Memories, complete history of Friday the 13th. So thank you for coming back and actually
Of
doing
course.
a talk about one of the films instead of a franchise retrospective, which we did a couple months ago, which was great.
Okay.
Yeah, glad to have you here.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. It's great. Yeah, so it's nice to be back. Well, virtually connected with Chicago, where I'm from, so it's always cool.
Yeah. Now, this is, I think a lot of people consider this one of the shark jumping Jason movies because he is going to space. And this
Yeah.
was sort of in lieu of the much anticipated, highly awaited Freddy versus Jason film, which came after this. But that spent like 13 or 15 years in development hell. So, from what I understand, Sean Cunningham got fed up with all the nonsense and just said, hey, we're just going to put something into
Hmm.
production. So, you've got Jim Isaac directing, Todd Farmer writing it initially before he's rewritten and kind of hacked to
Yeah.
pieces like a victim of the screenplay. Now, to start off, what I was doing my homework reading Crystal Lake Memories, and Todd Farmer kept and other people kept talking about the original script and how it was very action oriented, but very funny
Hmm.
and had a very unique kind of voice to it. But as the different rewrites went on and no one could decide on a direction, it ended up being the movie we got. Have you
Hmm.
ever read that screenplay, Peter?
No, unfortunately, I've only been told bits and pieces of it from Todd and about certain scenes from the director. And they talk about certain scenes. I'd never read the whole script. I know there was like a few sequences, like there was like a zero gravity sequence that was supposed to be really cool. The tone was a little bit darker. I mean, part of it was budget, um, and some of it's just like certain lines, like the moment when her fake nipples fall off, or want to, or I think there's a line about want to screw something, screw, and then it cuts to the guy in the screw.
Oh yeah,
Like
how's
that was
how's he
all
doing? He's
added in.
screwed. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that was like added in ad lib. So that kind of stuff was not in the script. The script was very straightforward and dark, and um, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
because this was, has been noted, and I really picked up on it watching it this time, possibly because it was in my head from what I read in the book, that this was the post Scream, it's the Kevin Williamson, um, kind of Wes Craven, I guess, Joss Whedon view on things where all of the dialogue has to be snappy, everything's a quip, all of the actors are young and hot and attractive, kind of even more so than regular Friday the 13th films.
Mhm.
But one of the things I thought was cool about that, because even though some of the jokes are annoying, was I like the fact that the cast for once they're all like uniformly smart people. There are
Mhm.
some dumb decisions, but usually that's made out of panic and not just, I'm going to go run upstairs when I should be running downstairs kind of a
Yeah.
thing.
I
Um,
guess there's no upstairs, downstairs on a spaceship. I guess there is.
yeah, that's true. Upstairs is outside. But let's go back. This movie did have kind of a weird history. It did get leaked on the internet, and I will confess that's the first way I saw
Mm.
it. I watched a friend at a VHS, and he brought it to the office, and we watched it over a long lunch one day. But because I was a big, Jason fan, and because I really liked the movie at the time when it finally did come out in theaters, I went and I paid to see it opening day. Sort of my way of paying this back to the
Yeah.
universe for seeing it for free. But what was your both you, Peter and Lee? What were your reactions to the film upon seeing it for the first time?
Mm. you want to go first, Lee?
Yeah, I mean, I saw it theatrically when it opened. I didn't see it on bootleg. And as a matter of fact, I didn't even realize that it had been bootlegged until I dug into some of the research for the movie. So I saw it all new. And then it's funny because I never saw it again after I saw it theatrically, and I never really paid attention to it. So it was almost when I looked at it again, just for the sake of us chatting, like I was seeing it for the first time. I barely remembered any of it. That's how much of an impression it made on me. It wasn't that it made a negative impression on me. It just didn't make much of an impression on me. But so that was sort of my first reaction to it. I definitely had a strong reaction to it when I saw it 2 or 3 times in the last week, which is probably
Wow.
I'll be good. I'll be good now forever, probably. But you know, I think it's I don't know if you're asking me you know, to give you my reaction to the movie or just what I initially thought of it. Maybe I'll let Peter go and then we'll dig into it.
Sure, yeah.
I saw it at a press screening because I was a journalist at the time, like mostly doing movie reviews. So I was at New Line, and to be honest, it felt pretty flat because usually press screenings are not a great place to see horror movies. I mean, you want to see with a crowd that's laughing, not a bunch of critics, and it's usually, I think it was maybe a fourth filled because it's a press screening. So, I mean, there's a lot of groans, you know. It was kind of a smallish New Line screening room, so like it looked like it was digitally projected, and back then digitally projected meant something different than it does now. So it had kind of a direct-to-video look, more so because the way it was being projected. So yeah, I remember thinking, oh, this isn't going to do well. Like this is, you know, and it didn't, you know. So I never saw it in the theater with an audience. To be honest, it wasn't one I really revisited a lot. It's not like the first few movies, you know, that I grew up on. You know, by the time I saw it, I was what, 20, how old I was, but you know, it's much different seeing the first few Friday the 13th when you're 12 or 13, and then seeing Jason X when you're 25, 30. It's like, you know, so I only returned to it when I started writing the book. I'll be honest, it was really fun to write about. Like, even though it wasn't one of my favorites because the production history was so colorful, it was really a lot more fun to write about than I expected. But yeah, even now I'm glad there's, you know, the group of fans that like it, but it's not really like my kind of movie, you know. Like anytime you go to space with a monster, unless it's alien, it's pretty tough, you know, to make Jason scary and he's walking around a neon lit spaceship tunnel. But yeah,
that's my kind of impression of it too. Is I think it's an all right sci-fi horror movie. It's just not Friday the 13th, and I wonder like how much of that just has to do with the setup, because I know they wanted to not step on a possible Freddy versus Jason movie by making it contemporary, so that's why they put it, you know, in the future. But in doing that, like they said it in what I think it opens in 2008, the crazy futuristic year of 2008, the Crystal Lake Research Facility,
yeah.
and they've redesigned Jason's mask so it's kind of this angular thing, and he's in this what looks to be almost like a red leather jumpsuit. I want to know what's been going on in the last several decades.
Yeah.
How do you end up there?
Yeah.
But with you know, David Cronenberg shows up as the head researcher, or the guy who's going above the head researcher, played by Alexa Doig. She knows that Jason's, you know, trouble and they're getting ready to cryo freeze him, but then this other guy comes in and says he wants him for the weapons division. Again, shades of Alien. Jason breaks out. There's a chase and a fight that ends up with both he and the one surviving scientist frozen. And then you fast forward 4.5 years to when they're discovered by a group of high school. Are they supposed to be teenagers or college, or I don't know what's going on here?
That went through a lot of changes. You probably read in the book. I mean, I think Sean Cunningham wanted them to be more really super smart, like almost like Star Trekky. Like this is the top of the top class, like young scientists. And then someone else wanted to be more scrappy, kind of. So yeah, it's kind of weird. Now I think technically they're Crystal Lake high schoolers on a space field trip or something.
Yeah,
I think.
Because I think Janessa at one point refers to a midterm or something like that
Yeah.
when she's getting ready
Yes.
to get favors for the professor or the teacher, I guess. But something that hadn't occurred to me until watching it yesterday was this whole thing goes down because the weapons division wants Jason to run experiments on. There's this accident, and Jason and Rowan, who's Alexa Doig's character, they get frozen for all that time. If it was such an important weapon, why did nobody visit the Crystal Lake research facility in all of
Yeah.
that time to find out what the hell had happened?
Yeah.
Any theories
Yeah.
on that, or do they just like, well, we'll scrap the project, it's not important?
Yeah, I don't. To me, there's tone and sensibility are really tough. Like, it's a very kind of a personal thing. Like, just the overall tone and approach to something like this, like that kind of sense of humor, that sort of sci-fi channel. Like, some people love this kind of stuff. Like, they find this kind of stuff really funny and oh, clever. Oh, yeah, now it's in space, and it's just not my sensibility. So it's a very hard thing to like. I don't really get any of it. Like, it seems like it's meant to be fun, and just having fun with the concept and kind of silly. It's sort of like, I don't like when someone gets hit in the face of the pie or banana over their head. I just don't laugh. It's not my kind of humor. But some people love the Three Stooges. You know what I mean? So it's really hard for me. Like, it's just so different from the early Friday the 13th. It's just a completely different sensibility and tone and idea that some people love. And so I can't answer your question because I don't understand it either. I really don't. Like, I don't really get it. So
That's
yeah.
fair.
Yeah, I would just sort of build on that and say, when I watched this movie this week a couple times, my reaction was that the tone that they were going for at certain points was somewhat in the realm of like Paul Verhoeven's Starship Troopers. That of
Mhm.
course kind of a very clever a satire on a whole bunch of
Mhm.
things,
Yeah.
and also featured a very young cast that was kind of acting very brainy, and from an audience perspective, we knew that Denise was way out of her depth driving that spaceship in the movie, or otherwise. But we had a lot of fun with it because Paul Verhoeven would really balance the satire and the comedy. And they were kind of having a laugh at the whole thing as well. And this movie, I think, was at times trying to do that. I don't think it's has anything to satirize really, or to be all that funny.
Yeah.
And so for me, part of this movie, the first hour of it is just a complete a drag to get through, and the last half hour is a lot of fun. And I say a lot of fun because there are sequences in the last half hour that just are really funny, and I think they're unintentionally funny. Like the number of times the spaceship crashes into whatever city or station that it's crashing into, and every time there's a catastrophic crash, they kind of lose their balance a little bit, and a couple of them fall to the floor, and then they stand right back up and insist on turning the ship around or otherwise. I mean, so there's some very funny stuff in there that's done with kind of a straight face. And so I think the movie just is kind of tonally all over the map, and Peter, reading the stuff in your book and listening to the commentaries and so forth, I always find it interesting that there's absolutely so much conviction that goes into making a movie like this, and it's ours to enjoy and laugh at for 90 minutes. But when you really dig into the stories of the actors, the camaraderie on the set, the way they approach the characters, the seriousness with what they were kind of trying to do, have fun and be serious at the same time. I mean, there was a lot of thinking that went into this film, like the other ones, and conceptually into it. But I think it just somehow doesn't quite make it. I'm not sure it's the worst one in the series, but yeah, it's kind of an also ran in my book. It just doesn't quite make it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to say, that there wasn't really anything they were trying to satirize. It really seems like they were just trying to satirize Friday the 13th. Like Starship Troopers has a very specific thing, things it's attacking, like totalitarianism and that kind of thing. I didn't say that right. Where Jason X isn't really that deep. It's just having fun with the conventions of Friday the 13th. So for me, like, I think the scene that probably achieved what they were hoping the whole movie might be like was the virtual Crystal Lake scene. Like, that scene works. I remember in the theater, everyone like kind of lit up, like, oh, it had a, but to be fair, I mean, talking with everyone, and I can understand like Todd's vision was really much darker and more serious. I think the movie might have worked a lot better. It had that tone, but it seemed like all these little decisions are made that kind of move it away, like the score, the little onset improvisations, certain things with photography. One of those things by itself wouldn't have been so bad, but when you add up all those things, it moved it all into a jokey kind of mishmash way where, like you said, nothing really coalesced the way it was intended. But it's like no one one person's fault, if that makes sense. I think it just sort of happened organically.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, and Ian is gonna think I'm sounding like a broken record in a way, if we can still say record in 2020 to describe
Oh.
it.
A corrupted MP4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so this fundamental idea that, in my view, has plagued the movies for the last 3 or 4 of them, which is we need to do something completely out of the box and totally different, and we need to depart from what in fact made the series successful in the first place. I mean, this movie just goes so far afield of that concept that it winds up kind of being nothing. I mean, it isn't really scary in any way. I suppose there's a little bit of action. It's a little bit funny, but what it really is just playing with Alien and aliens for 90 minutes, right down to duplicative scenes. I mean, there are scenes lifted right out of those movies, like the we have to keep the body alive for, you know, commercial purposes, or I mean, there are many scenes like that. And even there's a nod to Blade Runner in the certainly the I guess you call it mono scene, you know, with the robotic flipping up and down on top of Jason and so forth. And so there's so much of other movies in this movie that I mean, I like to give Todd credit for being creative, but it just seems to me like at the end of the day that it doesn't have an identity of its own. It's kind of a mishmash that doesn't really work.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. One of the things that stuck out was how much, like, there are other little nods to other Friday the 13th films. When I say nods, I'm question whether they were deliberate, like, hey, remember this part, you loved it, or just, you know, ripping things off, because the whole scene where the one kind of security guard, Gecko, she gets her throat slit by Jason, and then the next scene there's a guy who's one of her colleagues. He sees her coming from out of the shadows, but she's coming out and gasping, and her throat's, you know, cut, kind of like Shelley from part 3. The school teacher is trying to monetize Jason for his own exploits. That's kind of like Dr. Cruz from A New Blood. So not even ripping off the best moments necessarily, just all this kind of familiar stuff. But I will say, at the climax of this film, there were 2 really key moments that, Lee, you might have found these funny, and I can understand why, because in theory they are kind of silly, but I was kind of moved by them. There's the one where I think it was Kira, might have been her name, the girl who gets on the shuttle and she steers the shuttle into the ship and blows it up because she's still connected to the fuel line. I just thought that was kind of a nice, sad moment, because she is completely freaked out. She's lost her mind and she's not thinking correctly. And then the rest of the crew is outside the door trying to communicate with her, saying like, no, calm down, it's going to be okay. And she just can't handle it. And I thought that was really sad. And then shortly thereafter is when Janessa, that famous scene where Jason punches a hole through the wall, the vacuum of space is sucking everything out. What is the actress's name who played Janessa? I've got it right here.
Melissa Ade.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought she was really good in that scene, and that you really see her struggling to hold on. Yeah, it's a completely ridiculous scenario, but I don't know what they were putting her through to get that sense of exertion on her part, but I really felt like she as an actress was in danger of being sucked out a hole into space. Her character was also sort of the key for me in this entire film, because she's the sex pot. She's also the kind of schemer, but she's also seems to be a good person who cares about her shipmates, and she's also really smart. She's sitting there like setting up, you know, navigational systems for the ship or whatever she's doing. It's sort of a unique person that we don't see a lot of in the Friday the 13th movies, certainly, but also in, you know, kind of popular science fiction. So these odd little anchor points where I'm like, if this movie had just been better on a number of other levels, some of the stuff that works in here could have really shined.
Yeah.
You have an incredible amount of compassion.
You just wanted to see her. You just wanted to see her get sucked out into space and all the gore effects. Like, get rid of this.
That's no example. They couldn't afford it. You know, Jim, as like I said, I think in the book too, you know, it was originally kind of scripted to be more of a big moment, and now in the movie, it's like you don't see it. It just doesn't really have the impact because they couldn't have, you know, done it.
Which I wonder about that. Like, what would they? Because I think that the cut that they do is very effective, because you see her start to fly, and then it's a close up of the vent with this meat like kind of sprinkling out of it. I thought that was, you know, it paints more an image in my mind of what happened rather than trying to like
Mhm.
maybe do some kind of a shoddy CGI effect where you see her body like getting pulled through
Yeah.
the thing. I don't
Yeah.
know, because I read
Yeah.
that too, and I just like I don't know what that would have been.
It's kind of weird that the hole didn't get any bigger when she went through it. I mean, it's still only like this. Even though she goes through it. I mean, are we to infer that she was shredded as she went through? I
Uh,
mean, or
I
yeah.
think so. Because the other thing is that if I remember the angle correctly, that's not even the hole that Jason punched through. It was like another grate that had been damaged, I guess, during the
Mhm.
rest of the vacuum stuff. Because Jason punches this big, almost like Bugs Bunny sized hole through the door, but she gets sucked out of this very much grating. That's like a little hole. But I don't
Mhm.
know. Maybe I'm just seeing things. It's been known to happen.
No.
hey, let's talk about the production values in this movie. And I mean, I was shocked to sort of look at this movie, given some of the others, that the budget was so much more than the
Mhm.
budget on some of the smaller ones, exceeding like $13 million. And in fact, you can actually see the money in the movie. I mean, the effects are fairly convincing at times. The sets are interesting. I mean, it has a glossy look about it that is certainly better than many science fiction B movies of the time. If we look at movies like A Galaxy of Terror, Forbidden World, or otherwise, I mean, these are much slower rent looking movies than this movie. So no one could say this movie doesn't have a kind of a gloss to it. I was really surprised that the budget could be 13 million when the films prior to this have shown dwindling returns on much smaller budgets. I'm not sure how they overshot or overestimated that they would make back that budget plus a profit. I mean, it seemed like an excessive budget for a Friday the 13th movie.
Yeah, that's tough. I don't know what New Line's reasoning was. I think it was video sales, because Jason X sold 500,000 on DVD. Because people forget, back then, DVD was really hot. I mean, this was like the peak DVD, really. And back then, you had a bunch of video stores. So if you made a movie, you were guaranteed to probably sell 2 to 3 copies to every video store in the country just for rental. So that's where, you know what I mean? So my understanding is it was mostly video. They were expecting, decent theatrical, better theatrical than they got, but that combined with DVD and TV sales, that's where they would make their money. Because that again, that was the time when DVD. There was a point, I can't remember what year. It might have been around 2000 something, when DVD became the tipping point where they were making more money off of DVD home video sales than theatrical. So I think that's probably where that money came from. I would actually kind of disagree, though, because I feel like when a movie tries to do too much, it ends up looking cheaper to me. So like when I watch Jason X, every time I'm like, oh, if they had a little bit more money, so to me it's constantly looking less than, because even though it costs 13 million, to me it looks cheaper than the other Fridays, because other Fridays aren't trying to do too much. And part of it is just digital effects just jump so quickly that stuff seems really dated now, like the nanoparticle stuff, like that CGI. It's like, oof, like, so yeah, it's a tough one. Yeah. And it's just so brightly lit, and it just looks like a sci-fi TV. I hate to say it. Yeah.
It
Because
does.
also this is the first movie that from what they said, it was shot on film but transferred entirely to digital and finished in digital. So basically a bunch of plates, and then they did a lot of the effects digitally. So I think that too adds to the quality, because now that process is so much more advanced that you can take film and you post process, it looks amazing, But back then it has that kind of slightly cheap video look, even though it was shot on film. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
It does with
yeah.
those nanobots in particular. Watching it on Blu-ray, especially when they would have, kind of far away, like medium or wide shots, be able to see someone like on the operating table with the nanobots working. It almost looked like pockets of static had shown up on my screen instead of little
Yeah.
thousands of little robots doing their thing.
Yeah.
It is distracting. I do like the idea of that's how Jason was regenerated, although this is kind of a boneheaded thing. I don't know why they would have left that corpse in the lab that had the nanobots on
Yeah.
it. They probably assumed it was all busted up and there's no chance. But I will say that's one of the cool things that I think this movie does that I hadn't noticed in other Friday the 13th films. And whether or not this is intentional on the part of Todd Farmer, or it just happened thematically, there's an idea of Jason Voorhees as a curse, not demons inhabiting his body that allow him to come back from the dead, but just the idea that wherever he shows up, everybody's just going to be horribly unlucky. And everything that goes wrong in this film that can go wrong does. From the space station, not only does the ship that they're on, the Grendel, overshoot the space station that's supposed to offer them safety. They got 60 armed guards to take care of Jason, allegedly. It overshoots it, but also runs into it, damaging the space station, and then completely destroying it. So Jason Voorhees added like 60,000 people to his body count on accident in the course of 2 minutes. There's also the shuttle thing with the, like I mentioned, the fuel line were still attached. Just these random things that are like mathematically, scientifically impossible. When Jason shows up, everything, the worst possible scenario becomes the most likely.
Yeah. It's almost like Murphy's Law, the movie, really. It takes the writing. Well, because Sean Cunningham said that about the first movie. People forget because Jason's not in it. That movie was, the terror was that these kids are just out, you're doing what you're doing. And for no rhyme or reason, you just get killed. Like, it's just unlucky. You didn't do anything right or wrong. You just wrong place, wrong time. And I guess, Jason X does take that kind of concept and makes it futuristic. I never thought of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that concept, I think Todd talked a little about this in the commentary, that it's the idea of the pure evil that's going to snuff out these sort of very young lives and so forth. And there's some kind of weighty philosophy to that he's just a purely evil character. Ian, you and I have talked in other sessions about once the character becomes supernatural, then the films really turn in a way, because he just is indestructible. In some way, and so for me, this is kind of the main problem with the movie, which is my main problem with the Marvel movies today also, which is that when someone becomes indestructible, then there's no tension in the movie at all. So there's just nothing. I mean, when I sat here watching this film, wondering, what am I supposed to feel here? There's no way to stop this guy at all, and there was even a way to stop the Terminator, if you remember. I mean, Sarah was smart enough to sort out, how to actually destroy the Terminator at the end of the Terminator. But in terms of Jason, just to me, there's no tension in this movie, and there's no suspense in the movie, because there are no suspense sequences really built, with the exception of maybe the virtual reality sequence near the end of the movie. So I'm sitting there watching this movie, wondering, what am I supposed to take away from this? Is it that we're aiming so low in these movies at this point that the idea is just to have him pop up for a half a second, slash somebody for half a second, disappear the next second, and that's what we're hanging the whole movie on? The movie is so far away from any feeling of evil that we have in good horror films, and this is not Silence of the Lambs or The Exorcist. I get it, but it's very far away from reality. It's divorced from reality to a degree that I just don't know what we're doing here. We're populating a movie with completely artificial characters, with a villain who can't be killed, and they exist in the movie to just be killed. And so what's going on here? And so this is my principal problem with the last 4 or 5 movies, which maybe doesn't make me the right candidate to talk about these movies in a way, because I continue to say the same things, I guess. But I was watching this movie thinking, where is the tension? I mean, where is this? Is this a horror film? I mean, maybe it's not a horror film, and I'm looking at it wrongly,
Yeah, that's what a lot of people, younger kids I talk to, like it. Oh, it's fun. Like, they look at it, they're not expecting it to be scary or suspenseful. I don't really understand. Like, that doesn't appeal to me. Like, I'm like really like, well, then what's the point of watching it? But you make an interesting point about reality. Like, you think about Alien, right? Like, that is obviously wholly ridiculous. I mean, there's some creature with acid for blood and spaceships, but like, they create such a feeling of reality. Like, I believe everyone on that ship. I believe all this stuff exists. I believe the alien exists. It's like that scene where Dallas is running through, and people I talk about the chest burster, which is great, but there's that moment later when Dallas is kind of going through the dark things, and he turns the flashlight and the aliens. I mean, it's fucking terror. It still like makes me jump. Jason X has none of that reality. Like, I don't believe the world of Jason X for a sec. It seems like a fun creation. Like, hey, let's have fun and make a Jason space movie, which is totally fine. But like, I don't believe for a second any of these people. I don't understand how Jason's alive. Like, I don't understand. Like you're like, okay, so there's this Crystal Lake facility. Jason's the most dangerous creature in all of history. There's all this technology, but they chain him up like in this room with big lights. Like, the unreality of that whole scenario, like, it just feels fake and artificial. So yeah, I don't feel a single thing throughout the whole movie. It's just,
Especially because, during that Crystal Lake facility sequence,
yeah,
well, A, he gets out of those chains very easily.
yeah,
Unless he's just playing possum, and how long has he been sitting there waiting for his moment?
yeah,
But also they mention there's dialogue about how he was put on trial and he was executed, but they can't execute him because they've tried electrocution, hanging, the firing squad. I want to
yeah.
see that movie.
Yeah. But again, that goes into jokey, that's the kind of fun I think some fans like that. Oh, I put a Jason on. That was actually a few of the concepts for Freddy versus Jason. There was a Jason on trial movie, script version. But I think maybe some people like that. Like I'll be honest, so I'll get hated by people, but I don't like the Evil Dead movies. Like Armored Darkness and Evil Dead 2. I don't get it. Like it's just they're
Me
comedies. They're not horror movies. It's just people acting goofy, being slapstick. But some people love that. Like they love all the physical comedy and the over the top goo coming out of creatures. Like to me, like Army Darkness is a comedy. That's not a horror. There's nothing scary about it. So I mean, more power to people who enjoy it. But that's what Jason X is kind of like to me. It's like kind of a slapsticky comedy parody in space.
Yeah, I was talking to another friend of mine about this who's a big fan of comedy horror, and
Yeah.
so he loves Return of the Living Dead, and down the whole list, which is a fun movie in its
Yeah.
own way, right? But I think it's really hard to do it because those are even though they both comedy and horror are designed to produce a physiological response in you, it's a different response, and so to put them next to each other in a movie and then maybe almost simultaneously, for me it doesn't really work.
Very hard.
I just can't be afraid. And as I was telling, I just saw Fright Night again recently, which I think is one of the few movies that does do that very well, that rides that line very very carefully, sort of back and forth. But this movie doesn't seem to do it. And there is one scene I thought in the movie that was effective, though, that has a comedy that's intended, which comes from the actress who I think is pretty good and would be good in other things, and that's Lisa Ryder, who plays KM, of course, who I think gives a real performance in the movie with what she's got to work with, and the scene where she kind of takes Jason on, just her reactions, the stylization of her body movements, her kind of Daryl Hannah-esque, as I mentioned earlier, acrobatics, as she kind of does all obviously she's not doing the flips, but the illusion is sold. So I thought she did a pretty good job in the movie of kind of making me laugh. But I never felt sort of scared by what was happening. I did like a couple of moments in the movie, though. I liked, for example, the moment where Jason is regenerated, simply because I thought the shot of the new version of him was cool. The close up with the red eyes and the new sort of face and the whole bit, I thought was pretty cool. And I also really thought the liquid nitrogen murder was effective. I know people love that kill, and that's really well done. I mean, it's a good marriage of the effect, which is good, and also the shot with the pulling back of the head and everything, just at the right moment. So I thought, there's a couple things in there that were interesting. But Peter, I agree with you. I'm just not sure how to feel in a movie like this, because it doesn't scare me. And I always go back to that shot with Warrington Gillette coming through the window in the second movie, which is to me the high point in the whole series. And that still, like when you mentioned Dallas in the tunnel in Alien, and we're waiting for him to make that turn to see what's in the tunnel with him. I mean, even though you know in the second film, every time you see it, that Warrington is going to come through the window, in that moment, it's still, what's the exact moment that he's going to come through? We're waiting for it, and every time he comes through, you have that little jolt at the moment. And I have to ask sometimes, I wonder, like, is it that hard to create those kind of moments? I mean, is it that hard to weave that into a movie like this? I mean, I get that wasn't their intent, but fundamentally, I mean, is it that hard to come up with a couple of good horror moments that just exploit people's basic fears?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's funny they mention that, because that's another kind of moment they do try and recreate in this film, is when all the kids are huddled in the lab with their professor. Jason does burst through the window, but it's not effective at all. And I think part of that is because the moment preceding that is one of the most drawn out. I'd forgotten how drawn out this moment was, but all the kids are, there's a pounding at the door, and they go up to the, their side of the door, and they're listening and they're waiting, and it's all for a gag, about like, I think he's gone. Why don't you stick your head out and have a peek? But I swear to God, they're waiting for like 2 minutes of screen time where nothing is happening. It felt like they were padding for time or something. And then of course, Jason jumps through the other side of the room, and everyone has a chance to run away. So yeah, it is kind of sloppy. So maybe it is hard to recreate that moment, but it doesn't seem like it should be.
I'm paraphrasing, but Wes Craven said something interesting, that it's not the scare itself, it's everything around it that makes it scary. So like anyone, he's like, it's pretty much, and other directors have said this, like the mechanics of setting up a scare aren't hard. You have someone walk and you do some cool framing, and but if you don't care about the character, you haven't, set up an environment that's scary and have people invested, it's just a cheap trick. And it's true, like in Jason X, like I couldn't tell you who any of these characters are. Like, I mean, like think of the first Friday the 13th where I watched the other day on the new box set, when Janine Taylor Marcy goes into the bathroom and there's a tracking shot of her feet, and then she's at the thing, and then you see the curtain move and she creeps over. Like, there's nothing unique about that. I mean, it's a pretty standard, but I like her. I believe in the environment. I'm into the story, and I'm scared for her. That's why it's scary. Like, there's nothing, crazy about a curtain moving and a slow dolly shot, on a dark, creepy space. So like anyone can do that, but Jason X, like I don't care about what's happening to anybody, so it's nothing scary. Like,
and you're basically talking about the human fear, basic human fear of being alone in the dark, in a rainstorm, and what might happen, and that's so simple. That's what the first film does so effectively, is continue to place people in that very simple scenario, which is something we would all be afraid of, getting lost in the woods. What would happen if we got lost in the woods at night? So these are very basic things that the movies have kind of gone far away from. But Ian, your point about the going through the window, which is kind of a simple shot in several of the films.
It's in part 4, and it's all over the place.
I mean, part 4 is a good example where Ted White comes through the window. There's something incredibly menacing about that, the way he grabs Corey Feldman, and all of this has happened. Corey Feldman, of course, has done the work of creating a character up to that point in the movie also. So that works. And so it's funny because inherently the idea of somebody coming through the window, I guess, is not really what's the scary part. As Peter said, it's the world building and the people building up to that.
Now, a couple of things. One, maybe you guys just aren't connecting with this in terms of the scares because we don't live in the future. Maybe things are different. No,
but like Alien though, like I still jump. I jump at Alien and Aliens and others. I'm trying to think of it, or even like a movie like the remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which I watched, the '78 one, which I like a lot.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's ridiculous. 2 pod people. I guess that San Francisco's different, but I can still fall for like crazy alien. Well, even a guy running around in a hockey mask is silly. I mean, so. Well, that's a fair point, though. But yeah, I guess space is a little bit harder. I guess that's the unreality of Jason X. It looks so artificial, and the characters are so non-existent that it's like watching clip art run around. It's just not. It's like the Star Wars prequels. When I watch those movies, I'm like, this is $200 million clip art. Like, it's like these weird people sitting on couches with squiggly things in the background. Like, there's no emotional. It just feels like nothing to me. I don't know.
Well, I think that's the key. When you brought up Marcy going to the bathroom, the first thing I thought about was not the axe coming down or even the moving curtain. It's the fact that there's time, Victor Miller in his screenplay, or maybe this is an improv, I don't know, but there was time in that moment for her to go in there, look, I think she was in the stall and she was reading graffiti on the stall. I can't remember the name of the fake book, but it was like by Willie Make It. Right? It's just
40 yards to the outhouse by Will He Make It. That's
okay.
So sad we remember that.
But it's just, it feels like something that's not scripted. It feels like a girl who's just, had sex. She's probably feeling pretty good about things. And she's like, gets a little kick out of something she reads on the bathroom wall. And then something awful happens. It's not just horror movie setup moment. There's time to breathe. And there's none of that in Jason X. There's a lot of characters, but there's very little character, which is, kind of frustrating.
I guess you have to feel like you're scared of that. Like when I watch the characters in like Friday the 13th or a realistic based movie, again, it can be in space, but it has to feel like alien realistic. Is like, I'm afraid that person's going to have bodily harm come to them. Like when Marcy's walking over, like, you're scared. Oh my God, it's gonna jump out and stick. You can almost feel it viscerally. Whereas Jason X are just a flatness where I'm not connected. And maybe that's my fault for not being able to connect to that kind of movie. But I don't know what the magic is that allows you to empathize with the character on screen and feel with them. Whereas other times you watch a movie and you feel nothing.
Yeah, it's funny
it's all just celluloid on the screen. Yeah. So.
I mean, you can get the same scenario, basic scenario.
Yeah.
You put James Cameron and Sigourney Weaver together on that scenario, and suddenly, like lightning strikes. It's funny because maybe you can't even see this at the screenplay level. It just either happens or it doesn't with the director and the actor, I guess.
Well, it's like, to me, it's a difference between Scream and Scream 3, right? Like Scream 1 is funny, it's self-referential. Yet when I watched the opening sequence with Drew Barrymore, I've only known Drew Barrymore and the character, for like 10 seconds. But when he says, I want to know who I'm looking at, it's like, I get chills. And I don't know what that magic is, whereas Scream 3, like, it's kind of funny. I guess some people enjoy it, but like, it's just goofy characters acting like children and you don't really care. And it's kind of silly, you know what I mean? Like it went way, and that's what Jason X to me, it got so kind of silly and fun. People are like, oh, it's fun. That's like the biggest thing I hear. It's fun. I'm like, but it's supposed to be a horror movie. Like, it's fun enough. Like, it's just making a few jokes and having unmemorable characters. Is that really something like great? Like, it's hard for me to like, yeah, it's fun.
It's funny because it's kind of it's like overwritten and underwritten at the same time. I mean, you get these lines like I need a full scan, glycerol levels and cerebral perfusion. It's all in the movies and in the movie, and decrystallizing this and that and the other thing. And in fact, the dialogue that Marcy had was much more effective. In its simplicity. So it's like overwritten. This one's overwritten, but it's underwritten in the important ways.
Yeah.
I think part of the the effectiveness too is the nature of the kills, because the earlier Friday the 13th movies, even though they got progressively more imaginative and creative, there was always a level of realism to the kills. Like when Marcy, when she gets that axe to the head, it looks like like a real person getting a real axe to the face. It's something that could happen. And it's not done in an over-the-top manner. It's very matter of fact, which makes it, an actual horror moment. Whereas seeing, some Marine get thrown over a balcony onto a giant screw, it's kind of cool that he kind of like goes down the screw, but again, it's cool. It's not scary. So I can compartmentalize Jason X and say, yeah, it's a fun, disposable movie that has Jason in it, but it's also not a horror movie. And I'm bothered by that on one level, but not so much that I can't, like I'm never going to watch this again. No, I'll watch it at some point, but not when I'm in the mood for a horror film. Then I'll go back to the first 4 Fridays. Well, speaking of actually, there's one thing I want to talk about. A bit of contention with this movie also was Harry Manfredini's score, which, talk about a sci-fi movie throughout a lot of this. He's trying to do like this, dark space fantasy score. It does sound very TV to me, but I think the one place where it really works is in that opening sequence, which has this meld of like this eerie kind of a sad quality with this fantastical element, almost like a sense of wonderment, like we're inside Jason's brain. But then everything after that is just kind of I know the filmmakers had envisioned something that was more like rock and roll, more like early 2000s, like hard metal, which would have been kind of cool. But what did you guys make of the score?
Well, I mean, there is a kind of a cool piece on the closing credits. And
that was by Ethan Wiley. It actually wasn't Harry Manfredini. Yeah,
I thought so. I saw that in the credits, and I wondered if that was not him. And I was kind of distinctly aware in the film that when they go back to the virtual reality segment, that it was the traditional music cues and stings from the first few movies that they're recreating the Camp Crystal Lake, but the rest of it sounded totally unmemorable to me. I can't tell you where any of it was placed or what defined it really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big synthesizer, like electronic music fan, and there's kind of like this interesting thing in the electronic music field between like real synthesizers, like pure electronic sounds, and then you start getting that Casio sound where it sounds just like synthetic instruments. And so Jason X, the movie, kind of mirrors the score where you listen to Harry Manfredini's first few, it's real instruments, it's violins and strings, and it's really scary. And then the more synthy it gets, it has that really like, Casio synthy sound. It's very artificial. So yeah, I prefer Harry's early scores to his later synth ones. So
Oh, sure.
yeah.
Hey, one thing I wanted to mention quickly with you guys is I wanted to get your take on Kane Hodder as Jason. And Kane certainly is a cool guy and is around all the time at conventions and so forth. And he made the character his own in the second half of the series. But I'm not sure the series does a service to him in a way, because if you remember way back in the realm of, for example, Richard Brooker, who was able to just sort of stand and look at the character of Vera across the pond and be really scary just standing there as a kind of imposing figure. I don't think that Kane gets those kind of chances in the movies he's in, because Jason is used in such a quick cut way all the time, just for instantaneous momentary stuff. And so this idea of being this kind of hulking, foreboding presence, I mean, he's certainly up to it as a performer. He fits the bill physically, but I think the movies don't really use him in as imposing of a way as maybe they could, at least in my view. And I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, his part 7 and 8, they're trying to make Jason scary. Jason's still pretty creepy in 7, especially with the but especially what Jason goes to hell a little bit at the end, but Jason X and certainly Freddy versus Jason. Now Jason's an icon. So the way Kane is lit and shot in Jason X, I don't think it doesn't make him scary. It's not his fault. It's he's not made to be scary. Like he's doing his big. He's doing his star turns now. So, yeah. And even like the way they cut it is interesting. Like some of the shots of like Kane just walking in Jason X, like it just doesn't look, it looks like a guy in a costume. It's very weird. Whereas like part 7, I mean, pretty much every shot of Jason in that movie is like, wow, he looks really, really kick-ass scary. His poses, his moves. I don't know what happened there with Jason X.
I know, yeah. Part 7, I think, is the highlight for me as far as Kane, partially because the way he was photographed, there's a lot of kind of like lower angles. So you're looking up these hero shots of Jason stalking through the woods. And also, until that mask comes off, usually when you see his face, it's like these very black eyes. You can see Jason's actual eyes like in every shot in this movie, possibly because of the lighting. But that's another issue I had with the makeup is I understand, I guess the concept was on a story level, because he can regenerate and all this other stuff, his skin was kind of growing back and he has hair now. I just saw Kane Hodder in that Jason Goes to Hell kind of mullet thing. Like I saw more of him underneath the mask because you can see the first shot of Jason's eyeball. It's like a regular human eye, with, regular flesh around it, nothing, gross or rotting really. So it's just, it's odd, but I'm kind of there with you in this film. Yeah. He's like the unstoppable locomotive force. It's, he's the Terminator, especially when he gets all metallized, but it's not scary.
Yeah. You watch the first 2 Terminators and the Terminators, it's terrifying. Yeah. First, when Arnold Schwarzenegger's, booking, you're like, fuck. So, yeah.
Well, fortunately, we do have a full series of other films to go back and look upon fondly, even if not everyone is on board with Jason X. And Scream Factory has put out this lovely box set of Blu-ray movies with all new special features and things, and even a bonus disc and all that good stuff. So that's how I was able to watch Jason X, which I will mention, speaking of Kane Hodder, did either of you watch the intro with Kane on the Jason X Blu-ray?
Yeah.
It was so strange because it's just him sitting in a living room and saying, "Hi, I'm Kane Hodder. This is my last appearance as Jason and Jason X. So I hope you like the movie." I was like, this is really lame, until he gets out of the seat and he goes and puts the camera in the Jason choke. He chokes out the camera.
Yeah.
That was worth it. That was better than the following 90 minutes.
We actually filmed that. That was extra. So it was a big discussion. What can we have him do to introduce the movie? That would be fun. So it was tough to come up with something.
So you were there for that?
Yeah. I mean, Eddie, we were the producers on those interviews. So yeah. So that was Kane Hodder's living room. So that's his house.
Nice. So well done. Because
we got Kane. We should introduce the movie. We're like, well, what does he do? I don't know. So Kane's like, oh, go and do this. So Kane totally came up with that. Yeah, that was all Kane.
Has Kane ever put you in the chokehold?
No, I have a picture with him. No, he hasn't. He showed me his kill tattoo. He has not. You heard about the horrible accident at the convention, right? The
No.
machete. Oh,
Mm.
so a fan wanted him to like whack him with the machete and thought it was a fake machete, and it was not. I mean, it was like blood everywhere. The guy's okay, but it was like this huge. Yeah, he actually whacked this poor guy in the head with a real machete. So yeah. So oh yeah,
Wow. When was this recent or was this
2 or 3 years ago. Yeah.
Jesus? So I guess
Yeah,
he's
you
probably
probably
got a
look it
no
up.
machete well,
Yes,
he's
I
not really
think
doing
so.
conventions now anyway, but
Yeah,
no
yeah,
machete.
true.
No,
Uh,
it was
whew.
a long time ago, but yeah, I met him at a con and did the the whole take a picture thing. He's like, "So you want me to choke you?" I'm like, "Oh, that'd be so cool." I thought he was gonna make it look like he's choking me, but he's like, "You sure?" I'm like, "Yeah." Nearly popped my head off like a grape. Uh, and I've got the picture, and it's not flattering for me certainly, but yeah, it's good stuff. No, so that was cool, but as far as the rest of the presentation, I mean, Scream Factory put out the laundry list of special features, a lot of them ported over from previous releases, but a lot of new content on here as well. So Lee, have you had a chance to pour through everything? Or I know you've been
What I
busy
did,
watching Jason X on repeat, but
yeah, what I did was, this is as far as I got with this last night. Was I took out the first two, did a little checking on how the 4K scan looked on the first two, and looked at the footage, of course, that everybody's looking at on the second one. So checked that out also, and then looked at on this one also. So I haven't poured into it or looked through it extensively. So that's been my experience so far with it. But I'm really hoping that at some point that Scream Factory will actually just open things up and make 4K UHD discs of the first a few of them. So fingers crossed on that. So.
yeah.
yeah, I will say, something we had talked about last time was the process of unearthing the part two, gore scenes. Got a VHS tape that had to be baked and all that stuff. So I wasn't sure what to expect when I watched this footage because I assumed it would be like really dark and muddy, and some of it is, but the big scene that I think everyone's going to be talking about is the double impaling in the bed, and I thought that came out looking really good, not quite good enough to incorporate back into the film, but as a standalone, as a fascination of finding out what happened when that spear went through the mattress, what was going on up top. I was thoroughly impressed and mortified, honestly.
It's funny. Someone actually already is on YouTube inserted
What?
the scenes back in. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they used
Oh,
Yeah.
added music and they added Foley. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
incredible. Look, yeah,
jeez.
Hey,
Now
Peter,
is
it looked like they calibrated the color and so forth.
yeah,
Also, they matched all of the levels. I mean, it almost looks
hmm
pretty seamless the way that
yeah,
they did it.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's really impressive. The only thing I've only watched on YouTube, so I don't know how it looks like on a big TV, but
Yeah.
it's almost I'm tempted to watch that version now in a way, because you get used to now seeing the full kills. So I was most surprised by the Adrian one with the I wasn't expecting that. I expected pop out of her. So that was cool. And the Russell ones, Scott upside down is pretty gruesome. The neck and all that.
Now there's something that I haven't gone back to look at this since I got the set, but the last time when we watched Friday the 13th Part 2 for this series, Lee, something that I picked up on is in the cabin with the shrine where all the bodies are laid, you do see the corpse of Adrian King. It's like this, you know, not mummified, but it's a skeleton.
Mhm.
I just put it together that you can see the ice
Mhm.
pick or whatever kind of sticking through her nose. So
Mm.
it's almost like something that we should have suspected all along. I think
Yeah,
fans just kind of thought, oh, it just went through a temple, but no, it came out sideways.
yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, I never paid attention to that. I always just saw the body there with the ice pick and then never looked at where
Yeah,
the ice pick was coming out of. So.
Yeah.
I didn't either. Yeah, no.
So I did notice, I think it was on a listing. I don't know if I read it or if I saw it on the disc, but there's Easter eggs on this. Is that true, Peter?
Oh, is there? Oh, so the cool thing about it is I'm really excited is that it's such a big set that there's a bunch of other producers. So it's really cool that like this whole group of like Justin Bean did some stuff, Michael Gingold, Eddie, me, everyone contributed. So like, I haven't even looked at it all. There was one Easter egg we wanted to put in. I don't know if it's on there. We asked them. We did the commentary with Amy Steele at the end. She told us the whole story about the part 3 script she got. Because the original script was about Ginny again in part 3. She gave us it was like 3 minutes long, so it's too big. So I'm hoping they put that somewhere. It's like an audio of her. And then we did a little short commentary with 3 of the people cast from part 2. When we did the cast commentary, we showed them the uncut footage for the first time. So we got Bill Randolph and Lauren Marie Taylor and Russell Todd audio reacting to watching the footage. I don't know. That would be cool if they put that on there, but if not, I'm sure I can make that leak that out somewhere on the web if people want to hear it. But so that's fun.
That's
yeah,
cool.
I don't know. I honestly don't know what the Easter eggs are. I don't know. Yeah.
That is something that I'll be watching. I'll be scouring the internet for the next couple of weeks because I don't have the time to like go and find the Easter eggs. But I know there are people
Yeah.
who are obsessed with that, so they'll leave
Yeah.
some breadcrumbs to the Easter eggs. Is that a
I'm
mixed
sure.
metaphor?
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah, I'm
also
excited about
too, honestly, I could probably, because I rip stuff, or so you get the disc and it's pretty easy to rip. When you rip stuff, you'll get all the pieces. So I'm sure somebody who's ripped it will just go through all the little files that you get when you rip it and figure out all the, because it has, nothing can be hidden in that case because it's all digital files. So, because do you guys remember it was years and years ago, they did the Nightmare on Elm Street box set. And it is almost like a game where you had to go through and do all this crazy stuff to find the features. Yeah. So
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily. It was kind of like what they did with Memento when that first came out. Like you
yeah,
had to solve puzzles just to get to the
yeah,
main menu. Like I just want to
yeah.
watch
I
the
was like,
movie.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm the same way. Like I'm like, so I'll let someone else figure it out. But yeah. I think the Abyss was like that. The James Cameron, they had like a lot of really hidden. You had to do all this crazy stuff, or click your remote, right, left, up, down twice, and then hit enter, and you get the thing. And then Jesus Christ.
Yikes. So what
Posted, I wanted to mention somebody posted something on Facebook the other day that was 2 screen grabs from part 2 of something I've never paid attention to, and I either they photoshopped it or it is actually true, and I haven't gone back to the movie to find out, but the license plate on the truck, I believe I think it's on Bill Randolph's truck at the beginning, and then on the ambulance at the end of the movie are the same license plate. Is that true?
I don't know. I never noticed.
From the truck to the ambulance.
That's weird.
That might make sense if they would have. I wouldn't think they would need to get a. Interesting.
It's like an ultra low budget movie. I mean, so maybe
yeah,
that is the case.
Yeah. Huh.
Is there any Easter eggs where they explain what happened to Paul?
Okay, so it's a big bit of news. I think I don't know. I mentioned it. So I don't know. Who cares? It's gonna get out eventually. But unfortunately, we did it. We recorded an audio commentary. It was me, Tommy Hudson, with Steve Miner, Amy Steele, and John Fury for part 2. Unfortunately, because of COVID and it had to be patched remote, there was an audio issue, so it's unusable. But in that aborted commentary, which is not on the set, Steve Miner talks about the ending and what happened. So I'm hoping to take those quotes and eventually do an updated version of Crystallic Memories, either an ebook version or audio or whatever, and put his stuff in there, because he did reveal a few cool things in that commentary that I never knew. So, nice. But yeah, it was meant to be reality. So Jason really comes through the window, and he wanted John Fury to come back for the next movie, so Paul would be alive.
Wow.
But it's not a dream. It's all supposed to be real.
That's amazing.
Right.
So when you say it's unusable, just curious, is it really unusual? Like it's all garbled, or is it like we just can't make it professional quality? Like you could listen to it, but it'd be kind of unpleasant.
It's unpleasant. So what happens is, unfortunately, of course it's Steve's voice, right? It's like this weird feedback echo. So it goes, and then you hear like 2 versions of his voice going in and out. And there's just some parts where the other thing is like, it's like, oh man, we finally got Steve Miner he did an interview for the box set. You guys know that he did a sit down. So that try to make up for it. It's like, you finally get this commentary. It's like, if we did a commentary with you guys and then you guys buy the set and suddenly Lee, you sound terrible, you might be like, mad, you know what I mean? Like you can't also put out something that makes someone sound bad. So out of respect for him, of course, you don't want to put out a comedy that makes him sound like shit. So so there was only like 3 or 4 bits where I literally had trouble understanding what the heck he was saying, but I only knew because I remembered what he said. But it just didn't feel like, we were just worried, like, fans wait and they see, oh my God, commentary with Steve Miner, and then they get it and it sounds like fucking awful, that they would be mad. So we even had some problems with the 5 and 6. You can hear it. There's a few points where people, because of the COVID, everyone had to be remote. So like when we did the part 2 group chat, like Lauren Marie Taylor was in New York, Bill Randolph was in New Jersey. Kirsten Baker, me on the everyone's separate, and like you can hear lightning in the background of Lauren's. And then one time she forgot and moved herself away from the microphone, so she's silent. You just kind of go with it. But that was like isolated things with the Steve Miner. It was like this horrible, like I'll send it to you guys if you want to hear it.
Yeah, love to hear that.
That one big thing he revealed was that, you know, the bit in part 2 when Mrs. Voorhees' head, you know, was talking at the end. Betsy Palmer came back. Steve was doing something, he couldn't shoot that, so he called Wes Craven, and Wes Craven shot that footage.
Wow.
The Wes Craven shot a bit of Friday the 13th. Yeah, we were like, what? So yeah, I never heard that before, so that was cool. So yeah, so,
man,
that was a bummer. Yeah.
So how long, I mean, it sounds like you were really like knees deep in this whole box set along with a lot of other people making it happen. How long did it take to actually put this all together from the time someone said, hey, shout, scream, we want to do the entire series, get everything together, to now it's in everyone's mailbox?
Gosh, I first heard about it back in spring of 2019. And it wasn't official because they had to do the deal with all the studios. They say, hey, it's pretty much coming, be prepared. And the big problem was just it's a box of 12 movies. There's no way. I'm like, I can't do it all. You know, one person could do it all. So it was great you got all these people to do it. So we started in earnest. That was the problem. We started doing the commentaries in January, February, and then COVID hit. So literally what happened with the Steve Miner was like, it was going to be in person in a recording studio. And then 2 weeks later, it was like, we can't do it. So Steve Miner went to John Fury's house. And that's the problem with part was they were sitting next to each other. And there was crossed, and then Amy Steele was over there and I was over here and Tommy Hudson was in Canada. So everything had to be patched in via Skype. And it was like, so yeah, so I started in earnest in January, February of this year.
Well, that honestly, it adds credence to my theory that every time Jason Voorhees is involved with something, just bad luck follows him everywhere.
It's true. Yeah. True. Oh, well, the other thing, so actually I should correct that a little bit. We actually did some of it 3 years ago. So what happened was we got a call from Scream Factory after we did Valentine Urban Legend. They're like, oh, we got Jason X and Jason Goes to Hell. Because at that point they had the thing with New Line, but not with Paramount. So some of the stuff with like the Adam Marcus commentary we did, that was from 2018. Because that was supposed to be standalone editions. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, now we're doing a box set. So that was put on hold. So some of the features were, so that was all done in person. That's why we were at Kane Hodder's house. Because awesome. That was a real, like the Harry Crosby interview that's on the set, that literally the cameraman, we had to be done through Skype because he's in New Jersey. So Eddie had to get a camera guy, and he had to stand like 12 feet so to go to Harry Crosby's house. They never actually could even shake hands. So that was done social. Wow. That's why Harry's a little bit far away. You had to make a go of it, you know? So yeah, COVID. I thought they were going to postpone the set, but Scream Factory is like, no way, we have to do it. So it was a little hard doing some interviews. Like we were trying to get a part 4 commentary. We couldn't do it because of COVID. Like Kimberly Beck and a couple of people said yes, but then because of COVID, it just didn't work out and they didn't want to do it another way. So
that's crazy. I mean, I didn't really think about that because part of me thought, well, this has just been in the can, so to speak, for a long time, but this was actively in production during this whole crazy year. Mm-hmm. It is kind of a miracle that we've got this, you know, at home now. Well,
yeah. And I mean, it's just a totally different. Well, it's a normal, like if you get a recording studio for a commentary, you go to a professional recording studio and you sit and you have the headphones in. And if you need some remote, they patch it in. It's all super high tech, but it was like, we just got to do it. Like the part 2 commentary was really hard because you're hearing stuff. And then again, you try to tell people to wear their headset and someone's like, I don't have a headset. And so then they forget and they're talking, they're doing this with their phone and you're hearing the person. And it's like, so hopefully fans will just accept that, you know, certain quality aspects aren't 100%.
Yeah. Well, I have not had a chance to dive into the whole thing either because I just got it yesterday and I was watching Jason X. I almost said Jason 10. Yeah. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to exploring the rest of it. And yeah, congratulations on helping get this thing done. It's really cool.
Oh, I hope fans like it. So yeah, it's cool. It's definitely the definitive. I mean, I've been told this is the last physical release of this type. Maybe they'll do 4K standalones, but I mean, I think this is the last big box set of it. I can't imagine there'll be another version. So it seems pretty definitive. So it's cool.
Yeah. Nice. The only thing that would have made it ultra definitive is if they'd included remasters of the entire TV series.
Do you count that? Do you guys count that? I don't know.
I love it, but I don't count it. No.
Yeah. Yeah. I never watched it as a kid. I refused because Jason wasn't in it. I was a purist. So I've seen a few episodes. They're fun, but it is different watching it now than I'm sure when you were a kid.
Oh yeah, I was obsessed with that show when I was younger. They put out some DVDs a few years ago, but they look like they were recorded from. They look like the VHSs I made back in like 1987, 88. I'm like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe someday.
I
But
think someone did a book just on the TV series. I think I can't remember her name. Yeah, it's all about the TV series. She interviewed Roby and John LeMay, and so you should get that book.
I definitely should. I'll have to look that up.
I think it's called Curious Goods. I think is the name of it.
Sweet. All right, cool. Lee, do you have anything before we go?
No, I mean, I just am really looking forward to the next one. So
Yeah, me too. Thanks, guys. It's great. So,
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks again, Peter, for joining us. You'll be doing another one of these soon, I guess. But yeah, it's great having you on last time, and this time it's an open invitation. So yeah, thanks a lot.
awesome. Thank you, guys.
All right, take care.